here.
Tony, can you tell us a little bit about what you did?
See Washington Journal every morning at 7 Eastern live here on C-SPAN. We're leaving it now as the U.S. House is set to gavel back in for legislative business. And now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Today is a significant day for Americans in this election year. We ask your blessing upon the American people, especially those who choose to participate this day in primary elections. Give them good judgment and a sincere desire for the welfare of this great nation as they cast their ballots. Bless as well the members of this people's house. May they be filled with your Spirit this day and exercise their responsibilities with wisdom, understanding, and goodwill. May all they do be for your greater honor and glory. In the past few days, O Lord, many have been assailed by terrifying and destructive weather. Send your healing balm upon those who have been afflicted, and bless with rapid success the efforts of those emergency responders who are working tirelessly to rebuild shattered lives and communities. And finally, with sorrow, we acknowledge the passing of Donald Payne of the 10th District of New Jersey. We thank you for his years of service in this assembly and ask you to bless his family and loved ones. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. May his soul and the souls of all the departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Higgins. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, Iran continues to inch closer to making its nuclear ambitions a reality. The administration wants Israel to give diplomacy more time, but Prime Minister Netanyahu said pressure on Iran is growing, but time is growing short. For Israel, a nuclear-armed Iran threatens its very existence. Ahmadinejad says he wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and this radical extremist means what he says. Israel will do what it has to in order to be master of its own faith with or without the United States. Unfortunately, the days of full trust between the U.S. and Israel seem to be on shaky ground. Netanyahu said, quote, "I will never let my people live in the shadow of annihilation. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. But this duck is a nuclear duck, and it's time the world start calling a duck a duck." Mr. Speaker, America must totally get behind our friend and let the Iranian duck know whose side we are on. And that's just the way it is.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to discuss an issue that is very important to the hard-working men and women in my home state of Rhode Island. Madam Speaker, Rhode Islanders learned yesterday that our workforce has grown smaller and our unemployment rate sits at 10.9%, third highest in the nation. While some may struggle to see these problems from the steps of the Capitol, I hear frequently from constituents who can't understand why the House still has not considered a comprehensive jobs plan. That's why I and many of my colleagues have been working hard on legislation to put Americans back to work, including our Make It in America agenda, to help reinvigorate American manufacturing. We also need to start developing new ways to repair America's infrastructure and new ways to finance it, like a national infrastructure bank, a modern-day version of the WPA. And we need to provide much-needed help to small businesses and entrepreneurs. Yet the House leadership has stood in the path of progress on these issues. Rhode Islanders know that Congress can do better. We need to work together and get these things done and get the American people back to work. I yield the balance.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House in 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, since the President was sworn into office in January of 2009, gas prices have risen drastically by 156%. This fact shows the President's energy policy is failing our country and destroying jobs. According to the National Federation of Independent Business, rising energy costs are a constant struggle for our small business owners. Our small business owners are already threatened with the rising costs of health care due to the mandates of the government takeover health care bill. Instead of supporting effective energy policies that will lower the price at the pump, this administration has decided to delay the Keystone Pipeline, a project that will create over 100,000 jobs at no taxpayer expense. If completed, this project will dramatically decrease our dependence on foreign oil and provide relief with energy costs for every small business. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to express my concern about the presence of Hezbollah in the Western Hemisphere. In the Homeland Security Committee, we have heard from experts who testify that Hezbollah, which is a terrorist proxy for Iran, Syria, and Venezuela, has an active membership in 14 North American cities, including Toronto, which is 90 miles from my Western New York home. Some dismiss this concern by saying that their activities are limited to fundraising. This is not comforting. So, Mr. Speaker, I have joined with my colleague Jeff Duncan to introduce H.R. 3783, the Countering Iran in the Western Hemisphere Act. Our legislation would call for the State Department to investigate Hezbollah's presence in the Western Hemisphere and to create a long-term strategy for keeping our communities and our nation safe. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that this bipartisan legislation was unanimously passed in the subcommittee. As this bill moves through the House, I urge my colleagues to support our legislation to combat this growing threat. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Kansas rise?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Gentlelady is recognized.
It's been 4 years since the height of the Great Recession, and our economy is nowhere near where it should be. Unemployment continues to hover around 8%, and thousands upon thousands of hardworking Americans have left the job market altogether. After the President killed the Keystone Pipeline, gas prices have skyrocketed, and by some estimates, more than 20% of homeowners are underwater on their mortgages. Madam Speaker, Americans need real jobs, real solutions, and real results, not the unprecedented, unacceptable, and unsustainable wasteful Washington spending some of our colleagues continue to promote. It's time Washington started protecting and respecting the hardworking American taxpayers. We need a system where their hard work is rewarded and every American has a chance to succeed. I urge the Senate and the President to pass our jobs bills and work with us to get the American people back to work. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition?
Address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized.
Paid $4.01 a gallon at home in Oregon last weekend. There's a lot of people got long-term plans, drill now, drill here, drill everywhere, conservation, whatever. Say there's nothing we can do in the short term. Well, there is. 70% of the oil futures, the supply of oil, is owned by speculators on Wall Street and other places around the world. 70%. The head of ExxonMobil testified that about $38 a barrel is due to speculation. That's the head of ExxonMobil. He says we're paying $38 a barrel for speculators on Wall Street. Goldman Sachs says, well, it's only $22 to $28 a barrel. Let's take the lowest number, $22 a barrel. That would lower regular gas by 64 cents a gallon if we got rid of the speculators. I've proposed a tax of 1/100th of 1 cent per transaction that would drive most of these speculators out of the market and raise some revenues. It's time to get rid of the speculators, provide price relief to Americans, and then we can talk about a long-term plan for energy self-sufficiency.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the President's policies have failed and indeed made our economy worse. For 3 straight years, unemployment has been above 8%, and the Congressional Budget Office predicts now that will last through 2014, the worst period of sustained high unemployment since the Great Depression. America has a deficit of jobs because America's job creators have a deficit of confidence in this administration. New business startups are at an almost 17-year low, and that's why House Republicans have a plan for America's job creators that will help ease the President's job-killing policies. Our plan will continue to unfold this week when the House votes on the actual Jobs Act to help small businesses and entrepreneurs access vital equity capital and put Americans back to work. The bill does exactly what the President's own Job Council recommends. It's time for once to work together to pass the Bipartisan Jobs Act and give the American people the jobs and recovery they deserve. Yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, last night we lost a world leader, a father, a grandfather, a brother, an uncle, a great leader who consistently brought light to human suffering taking place around the world and what we here in Washington, D.C. can do for it. It is with a heavy heart that I rise today in memory and in honor of Congressman Don Payne, a brilliant leader, former chair of the Africa Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs, and to do what I'm sure he would be doing if he were with us today, speak out against the massacres taking place in Sudan. These killings are taking place in the Sudanese state of South Kordofan, outside the view of this Congress, and most Americans are unaware of this humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in the same region where we saw bloodshed in Darfur for many, many years. Madam Speaker, on this day of mourning for Representative Payne, I know he would want us to recommit ourselves to act to prevent further bloodshed and suffering in Sudan. My thoughts and my prayers are with Congressman Payne's family, his friends, and his constituents. May his legacy live forever. I will deeply miss his wise counsel and his friendship.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
First, address the House 1 minute, advising consent.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, today the House of Representatives lost a distinguished member who served with honor for more than 2 decades. I had the pleasure of working with Donald Payne many times over the years. He had an incredible heart for Africa and suffering peoples in every corner of the continent. From Morocco to South Africa, he was a tireless advocate for freedom and self-determination. We worked together speaking on behalf of the Sahrawi people in Western Sahara. Representative Payne watched Western Sahara closely, working toward a peaceful resolution that would allow for a free referendum that could establish self-government. We also worked together in 2007 to recognize the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the British slave trade and honor the legacy of William Wilberforce. And in one amazing episode, he risked his life seeking peace in Sudan and nearly had his plane shot down in 2009. Donald Payne never missed an opportunity to advocate on behalf of the oppressed, and his work has had a lasting impact on the human rights of people around the world, and I'm proud to have fought the good fight alongside of him. He will be missed. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Vermont rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Gas prices are killing the American consumer. They're doing real damage to small businesses. In my state, Cabot Creamery, which has fixed price contracts to deliver cheese, very important to farmers, very important to that business. Price of gas going up $1. It's like another $135,000 off their bottom line. There's long-term issues we've got to address, but you know what? There's stuff we can do in the short term. The futures market has been flipped upside down. It should be serving end users like airlines, fuel dealers. Instead, it's been taken over by speculators. Goldman Sachs study says about $23 on the price of a gallon is attributable to speculation. That's about 56 cents when you go to fill up your pickup truck, about an extra 15 bucks just for the speculation premium. Past presidents have used the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to spook the speculators, to send a shot across their bow that they're going to be on the wrong side, the losing side of these trades. Let's use the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to give some relief to our consumers and to our small businesses. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition? Gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I received a letter from a young constituent who is a vigorous Boy Scout and a great citizen, Matthew Barbuti from Yorktown Heights, New York. He's only in 6th grade, but he's very concerned about our economy. And he wrote to me, if the economy doesn't turn around, our country will no longer be a world leader, and the American people will suffer. And Matthew, you are exactly right. We do have a tremendous job ahead of us, and we are working here, all of us together, for you and for all the kids in this country who need a future, the kind of dreams that we have been privileged to dream. So this week, we're bringing to the House floor the Jobs Act, part of a whole package of jobs bills that we've been sending to our colleagues in the Senate. And we certainly hope that with Democratic and Republican support and with the President's support of this bill as well, we'll be able to activate that economy to create the kind of jobs and opportunities that all of us need throughout this country, no matter where we come from. Thank you, Matthew, for your common sense. And, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, Rush Limbaugh's appalling attack on Georgetown student Sandra Fluke is no isolated incident, but part of a broader GOP assault on women's health. Republicans have ushered in Women's History Month with legislation to allow employers and insurance companies to deny women needed health coverage. But let's also take a look at their recent record on issues important to women's health. Last year, Republicans voted to end federal funding for Planned Parenthood, the largest provider of reproductive health services in the United States. They voted to eliminate funding for Title X family planning, which for 40 years has provided family planning services, cancer screenings, and other preventive health services to low-income women. And with their attempt to repeal the health care reform law, Republicans voted to allow insurance companies to once again deny women coverage if they've ever been pregnant, had a C-section, or been the victim of domestic violence. Madam Speaker, Republicans' idea of Women's History Month is reenacting the women's equality fight of 100 years ago. I call on my GOP colleagues to join us here in the 21st century, where women not only raise families, they have jobs, and they even wear pants. I yield back.
Purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois rise?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, hundreds of advocates from across the country traveled to Capitol Hill last week to raise awareness on behalf of the National Down Syndrome Society. Today I rise to congratulate one of those individuals, Bridget Brown, who has been honored with the 2012 Self-Advocate of the Year Champion of Change Award. A resident of Darien, Illinois, Bridget has helped to empower and inspire thousands of others with Down syndrome to lead full and successful lives. A role model, mentor, and national speaker, she graduated from high school in 2005 after becoming the first person with Down syndrome to be included in her school district. She helped to promote among Illinois educators the concept of inclusion and launched her own advocacy organization called Butterflies for Change. I applaud Bridget for her amazing work at the local and national level to help others achieve the full potential. She has made her state and her community proud, and I wish Bridget continued success in her efforts on behalf of the more than 400,000 Americans with Down syndrome. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Wisconsin rise? Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 4105, a bill that would allow us to protect American manufacturing, including Wisconsin's paper industry, from unfair Chinese trade practices. The simple fact is that China is cheating. Chinese manufacturers are not outcompeting American manufacturers. Chinese companies receive direct subsidies from their government to help them undercut American businesses. We've seen the result this has had on our manufacturing base, and in my home state of Wisconsin, particularly on our paper industry. In the paper sector alone, China has provided more than $33.1 billion in subsidies from 2002 to 2009, and is now the world's largest producer of paper and paper products. Hard-working American businesses in these and other sectors rely on countervailing duties to combat these illegal subsidies and help keep their doors open. Last month, I introduced bipartisan legislation to ensure the Department of Commerce has the legal authority to impose these countervailing duties on subsidized imports from countries like China. I'm very proud to see that legislation incorporated in the larger bill before us later today, and I urge my colleagues to vote aye. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas rise? Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to welcome Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his visit to the United States and to reaffirm our commitment to our strongest ally, Israel. As Prime Minister Netanyahu visits our nation, Israel presently stands in the shadow of a threatening neighbor who is intent on producing nuclear weapons. Israel must remain the master of its fate and be able to defend itself against Iran. Iran's nuclear program is unequivocally a threat to Israel's existence and a threat to stability throughout the whole Middle East region and throughout the whole world by way of proliferation. There is no telling who Iran may sell their enriched uranium to, but their state policy of sponsoring groups that promote terrorism, it's not hard to speculate on the dire consequences. Madam Speaker, as we work together to combat global terrorism and those that would threaten peace, democracy, and stability in the world, we must stand strong behind our ally, Israel.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? The gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I have a headline here this morning that indicates women wait as politicians debate their care. This is not a story about accusations or calling college co-eds prostitutes and, if you will, whores and other negative words. This is about women's access to health care, and I'm even saddened to even say those words. But we see them broadcast across America's federal airwaves. But this young woman's name is Kimberly Moore, who is caught in the conflict in the state of Texas with the women's health program that is funded by Medicaid, and the decision of the state of Texas to evict Planned Parenthood from caring for women like Kimberly, a single mother working part-time who can't afford health care. Between judges who want to accuse our president of dastardly things through jokes and the idea of keeping women away from health care, not anything to do with their choice of contraceptives, but plain old health care, it's time for us to stand with the women of America and the decent people of America, to stand with this president, to stand with the idea of providing women health care, and to stand with Medicaid being used in states where they want to reject Planned Parenthood, who is simply giving health care. I yield back.
Time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi rise? Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, like many of my colleagues, I have visited the state of Israel. I have walked the streets of Jerusalem, and I have seen firsthand the beauty of its people, its culture, and its incredible history and heritage. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reminded us of that heritage last night as he addressed a crowd of thousands. And I know he is on Capitol Hill again today sending the same message. Serious threats have been made toward Israel, and Israel must take threats seriously, especially when dealing with a madman working toward a nuclear weapon. No one wants a war in an area where world peace rests on such a delicate balance. No one wants to have to initiate unnecessary aggression. I have supported sanctions. I have supported resolutions of disapproval. I want to believe that Iran's offer today to allow UN weapons inspectors in means that they have nothing to hide. If our friends in Israel decide to act, I know it will not be a decision made lightly nor without good reason. I urge my colleagues to join me in affirming our support of Israel, not just to stand behind her, but to stand beside her. I yield back.
The gentleman from Tennessee, rise. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This week is National Breakfast Week, which offers an opportunity to talk about the importance of a healthy breakfast for America's children. Breakfast, as we've all heard, is the most important meal of the day. Studies have shown that breakfast can help boost a child's academic performance and can also improve classroom behavior, reduce absences and tardiness, as well as increase mental focus and physical performance. However, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 1 in 5 children live in homes where food is not always available, making breakfast often hard to come by. I want to commend Kellogg's, which has a cereal plant in my district, and Action for Healthy Kids for starting the Share Your Breakfast program, which provides grants directly to schools or school districts to help them increase participation in school breakfast programs. Our children need to receive a holistic, well-rounded education, one that includes staying active and fit, and most importantly starts off with a healthy breakfast. I yield back the balance of my time, and I'm off to lunch.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, this is going to be one of those weeks where I believe we can be proud here in the House. We're going to be moving forward with a jobs bill. We've monikered Jumpstart Our Business Startups. I just had in my office a coalition from high-tech companies from Arizona, and they unanimously had a story to tell, and that was a story of the difficulty in finding capital for moving small companies, small organizations, these organizations that are creating jobs. And I'm particularly blessed this week to have multiple bills in the package. One is small company capital formation bill, a private company growth and flexibility act of the 6 bills that are coming. I'm proud of the House. I look forward to these bills moving forward. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I would like to speak about my dear friend Donald Payne and colleague who passed away this morning. I saw him on Saturday for the last time, and I can't think of anybody who in this House has been closer to me and someone who made it so much better for us to be in Congress, not only for all of us as colleagues, but also for the rest of the world. Donald always made me smile. Donald was a very serious person who cared so much about his constituents in Newark and the rest of the towns that he represented in New Jersey, and really reached out to the rest of the world. Was always looking out for the concerns of the poor and the disadvantaged and the people in need, whether it was their health care or whether they had adequate food or housing. But I think more than anything else, I remember his smile. He would always be happy. He would always have a joke to say. And frankly, in dealing with all the serious issues that he dealt with and he cared so much about, both here at home as well as overseas, it was always nice to have someone that you could call a friend, that you could confide with, that you could talk to about your own problems as well. But always with that smile, always with that joke, always with the ability to say, Frank, you know, let's not take ourselves too seriously, even though we have a lot of serious work to do. I will sorely miss him. I don't think there'll be anybody who can replace him. And I just want to reach out to his family and his friends back at home today and express my sympathy to all of them for such a wonderful person that we were able to share some time with here.
And
yes.
I couldn't leave the floor just to express our love and affection for Don Payne, and just to say that he saved lives because he intruded in places like Africa and Sudan, in Africa, and many other places. He saved lives because of his compassion for people, his fight for human rights, and his fight for peace. I yield back to the gentleman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, 176 years ago, the Alamo fell. Every Texan fighting for independence was either killed or executed. I'd like to read portions of the last letter sent from the Alamo by its commander. Fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged by 1,000 or more Mexicans under Santa Ana. I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword. I've answered that demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. Victory or death. Signed, William Barrett Travis, Lieutenant Colonel, Commander at the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. God bless Texas. I yield back.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on the motion to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Any recorded vote on the postponed question will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4105.
And the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4105, a bill to apply the countervailing duty provisions of the Tariff Act of 1930 to non-market economy countries and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin. Each will control 20 minutes, and the Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
And the gentleman is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I urge passage of this legislation to ensure that we can continue to fight unfair subsidies from countries like China that violate the WTO, injure our industries, and cost U.S. jobs. This legislation reaffirms that our anti-subsidy or countervailing duty laws apply to subsidies from China and other non-market countries and overturns an erroneous decision by the Federal Circuit that the Department of Commerce does not have the authority to apply countervailing duties to non-market economies. China distorts the free market by giving enormous subsidies to its producers and exporters, and our companies and our workers should not be expected to compete against the deep pockets of the Chinese government. That's why it's vital that we preserve this important tool and ensure that current countervailing duty orders and investigations from non-market economies remain in place, and this important tool is available in the future. In addition, this legislation fully complies with our WTO obligations. China agreed to be subject to countervailing duty laws when it joined the WTO in 2001, and the WTO has reaffirmed our right to apply these laws to China. Failing to enact this legislation would mean that we're unilaterally giving away a right that allows us to protect American workers. This legislation also brings the United States into compliance with its obligations by requiring the Department of Commerce to make an adjustment when there's evidence of a double remedy. Finally, I'm pleased that this legislation, which has already passed the Senate, is bipartisan and has the administration's support. For all of these reasons, we urgently need to pass this important legislation. I urge all of my colleagues to support this bipartisan bill. And, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
This bill will send a clear signal, especially with an overwhelming vote. The signal: there are clear consequences when a nation violates the rules. China is indeed tilting the field of competition by not playing by the rules. This bill restores a key instrument for our nation to hold China and other nations accountable. Failure to pass it would be an enormous step backwards at a time when indeed we need to fast forward our efforts to rein in China's abusive trade practices that in part led to a record $295 billion trade deficit with China. This legislation ensures that tools remain available under U.S. trade laws so that manufacturers can fight back against China's unfair trade subsidies. Countervailing duties have been a part of U.S. trade law for nearly 120 years, and today almost one-half, 23 of 50, of all countervailing duty orders in place involve China. This is not surprising. A central element of Chinese industrial policy has been to provide massive subsidies to its producers to help them knock out competitors and to dominate the market. These include loans at below-market interest rates, cheap or sometimes free land, extensive tax breaks, and other subsidies designed to advantage domestic industry. To date, countervailing duties have been the singular form of relief available to American workers and companies devastated by mercantilist policies. Over the last 6 years, Commerce has put in place 23 countervailing duty orders against China, 23, and 5 other investigations are currently underway. More than $4 billion in subsidized imports have been covered by these measures, shielding an estimated 80,000 American jobs from unfair competition. Yet in December, based on a deeply flawed assessment of congressional intent, the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that Commerce, which administers our countervailing duty laws, does not have the authority to apply those laws to non-market economy countries like China. That decision threatens to eviscerate the U.S. right to apply countervailing duties to China, a right protected under WTO rules, and it threatens to cripple commerce in its efforts to combat Chinese subsidies that harm our industries. With this bill, we are making clear that the Federal Circuit's decision was wrong and it cannot stand. Commerce has always had the authority to apply countervailing duties to non-market economies such as China, and now it shall continue to have and exercise this vitally important authority in the future. Because of this bill, and I urge the strongest possible support, tens of thousands of American workers and scores of American companies in 38 states across this country that have shown that they are entitled to relief from unfair subsidization by non-market economies will continue to get that relief. This bill ensures all the existing orders and investigations remain in place. For these reasons, I support passage of H.R. 4105, and I urge all my colleagues to support it. Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you. I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady.
Gentleman from Texas, recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I strongly support passage of this bill. When China repeatedly undermines the free market by subsidizing its exports to the United States, we can't just give them a pass, especially when the businesses China subsidizes are often government-owned businesses that compete unfairly against our American companies and workers. So if you don't believe the American government should pick winners and losers in the marketplace, you certainly don't support the Chinese government doing the same. There's an important distinction between the duties that seek to protect companies that are afraid to compete in the marketplace, those I oppose, and in this case, duties assessed against those who try to distort the free market through unfair government subsidies. It's the distinction between the price of legal software and illegal software. We would shoot ourselves in the foot if we denied this important tool to protect the free market for American workers. It's important, as Chairman Camp noted today, that this legislation is WTO consistent and fully within America's rights when dealing with China and other non-market economies. It's also important that this bill addresses the double remedies laws in the right way to ensure that America applies these laws in accordance with our WTO obligations. In conclusion, this legislation ensures the freedom of U.S. companies and workers to compete in a market that is not distorted by the Chinese government. It restores free market principles by allowing us to address China's unfair subsidies. It has no different impact on consumers than enforcing our intellectual property laws. We owe it to America's job creators and our workers to make sure we have the tools at our disposal to offset such unfair trade practices and allow the free market to work properly. That's why I urge strong support for this vital legislation. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan.
I yield a
11.
minute and a half to a distinguished member of our committee, Mr. Neal, from the state of Massachusetts.
The gentleman from Massachusetts, recognized for a minute and a half.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, I certainly rise in support of this legislation, which confirms that the Commerce Department can continue to apply countervailing duties on subsidized imports from countries with non-market economies, such as China and Vietnam. In fact, this legislation strengthens the opportunity to use an international forum for the prescribed purpose of resolving disputes. If our trading partners are not playing by the rules, it's imperative that the United States have the tools to challenge these unfair practices. Countervailing duties level the playing field for U.S. employers and workers and allow them to compete against imports that are subsidized through unfair trade practices. Emphasis on the word unfair. Since the Commerce Department started applying these duties in 2007, it is estimated that countervailing duties have protected an estimated 80,000 jobs in the United States. At the same time, it's important to point out this is not a protectionist measure. It strengthens our hand in dealing with negotiations. So let's pass this common sense legislation and keep American jobs defended against unfair trade practices.
Michigan, Mr.
Thanks,
Camp.
Thank you. At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from California.
Gentleman from California, recognized for 2 minutes.
I rise in favor of H.R. 4105 because we need to have every tool we can muster to fight China's unfair trade practices, which not only steal markets and jobs from American producers, but also provides Beijing with the means to finance its military buildup and expanding influence around the world. This bill should not have been necessary. It overturns a faulty court decision that claimed U.S. law prohibits the Department of Commerce from applying countervailing duties to non-market economies. Yet non-market economies, where the government directs business through trade subsidies, national planning and state ownership affirms this is where the greatest abuses occur that distort the market. Unfortunately, our system to combat trade abuses and unfair foreign practices does not work. We have had a massive transfer, which is evident when we see that we have had a massive, historic transfer of wealth from the American people to China over these last few decades. That policy should have been corrected long ago to prevent this deprivation of the American people. Furthermore, this bill allows the Commerce Department to adjust actions to avoid future negative findings by the World Trade Organization. Again, this should not be necessary because China should not be part of the World Trade Organization. It is not a market economy and thus should have been denied membership. It has not lived up to its obligations of WTO membership and thus Beijing is not a stakeholder. This should not be made a stakeholder in world affairs. It remains an aggressive communist dictatorship that supports every rogue enemy of the United States. It is the world's #1 proliferator of nuclear technology and the #1 abuser of human rights. It is a land of cronyism, corruption, and repression. We should not be helping a country ruled by this kind of government grow while we stagnate. We ran a $295 billion trade deficit in goods with China.
Gentleman, additional 15 seconds.
Thank you. We ran a record $295 billion trade deficit in goods with China last year at a time when the U.S. economy was struggling to recover from a recession and we had high unemployment. This bill would be a small step in the right direction, but we need to do much more to restore growth and balance to our international economic and strategic relations with other countries, especially China, and we should end this massive transfer of wealth from our people to China. It's a sin against our own people.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
I now yield 2 minutes to another distinguished member of our committee, Mr. Blumenauer from Oregon.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Levin. I appreciate the fact that our chairman, Mr. Kemp, our ranking member, Mr. Levin, are here today advancing H.R. 4105. We're not going to unring the bell. The Chinese government is an important part of the world economy. We are interrelated and interdependent. People buy things from China every day. I was happy to have them be part of the WTO so there would be rules of the road. It's not about protectionism for the United States. It is making sure that our partners, competitors in China play by the rules. And too often we've seen that they don't. We've seen massive unjustified subsidies. We've found cheating in the international arena in terms of stealing products, stealing websites. The Chinese government needs to be encouraged directly to play by the same sort of rules. If America is on a level playing field, our manufacturers can work with and compete against the best the world has to offer. But unfortunately, related to China right now, it is too often not a level playing field. This is an important step going forward to make sure that we can rebalance. I hope that the administration will be aggressive in using the tools that it has to make sure the rules of the road are observed. This has been a frustration I have had since I've been in Congress with Republican and Democratic administrations. I don't think we have done all, in fact, that we could. I hope that we will. I think this bill is a step in the right direction, and I appreciate the bipartisan show of support from our committee to move it forward. I hope the House passes it overwhelmingly and that it's something that the other body moves on and that we can have this in our toolkit. Thank you, and I yield back.
Yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you. I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Oversight Subcommittee, the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Bustani.
Gentleman from Louisiana, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong, vigorous support of H.R. 4105, and I want to commend Chairman Camp for his leadership in bringing this appropriate bill to the floor today. As a supporter of free and fair trade, I believe that U.S. companies and workers deserve a level playing field in order to successfully compete around the world. This bill restores commerce's ability to protect American jobs and companies from unfair WTO inconsistent practices, inconsistent trade practices perpetrated by non-market economies, mainly China and Vietnam. This is an important tool being used by several industries in my home state of Louisiana. The ability to use countervailing duties, companies that produce steel pipe, aluminum extrusion, woven sack industries, just to name a few. More importantly, many key industries, such as shrimp processors, want to make sure that this tool remains in place in case they need to use it in the future to deal with unfair trade practices. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the American Shrimp Processors Association, a letter in support of this important legislation.
Without objection.
As our industries expand and compete for businesses around the world, it's irresponsible to not have these types of measures, enforcement measures in place, and to take this vital tool away from the Department of Commerce. This has been a practice that is WTO compliant. We have used it for years, and now, because of a recent federal court ruling, it's been taken away. The bill simply amends the 1930 Tariff Act to allow this WTO compliant technique to be used to impose countervailing duties on non-market economies when they use unfair subsidies. It's fully consistent with our international trade obligations. It restores current practices. And, Madam Speaker, it's the right thing to do for American businesses and workers. I strongly encourage our colleagues in this House to support this important bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to another very active member of our committee, Mr. Pasquale, from the great state of New Jersey.
Thank you.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, how are you today? As co-sponsor of this legislation, I rise in strong support of the bill. I want to thank Chairman Camp and Ranking Member Levin for working together in a bipartisan way to address this issue, and I hope this is the beginning of more bipartisan trade negotiations amongst ourselves. I think it's healthy. We all know that China uses a variety of mercantilist measures to distort trade with the United States. From illegal subsidies, we must admit we are not playing on a level playing field when they are allowed to subsidize their industry, and we don't choose to do that. Second, forced technology transfers. And third, currency manipulation. It is important that our government have every tool at its disposal in order to combat these abuses and others. And this legislation will once again allow the application of our countervailing duty laws and the enforcement of existing orders to non-market economies like China. But we must go further if we're going to level this playing field, Madam Speaker, with China in a way that truly benefits American workers and businesses. We need to extend our trade remedy laws to cover currency manipulation, an approach embraced by a large bipartisan majority of this body that would create over 1 million jobs. Also, I believe we must embrace and fully fund the President's new Interagency Trade Enforcement Center to focus our resources on leveling the playing field with China. We can't continue to sit on our hands while Chinese businesses undercut American workers and our manufacturing base continues to drift overseas. Let's not stop with the passage of this bill, but continue to move forward on a fair trade policy that places American workers and businesses first. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
At this time, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Elmers.
Gentlelady from North Carolina, recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Chairman for bringing this very important piece of legislation to the floor for a vote. I'm here to join my colleagues in support of H.R. 4105, which will protect free market and prevent American businesses from unfair dumping practices of countries such as China. Madam Speaker, I hear from businesses in North Carolina every day who are telling me that in order to compete in the global market, action must be taken to prevent non-market countries like China from distorting the market and costing American jobs. Since 2007, the Department of Commerce has applied the countervailing duties to Chinese products where it determines that China has provided unfair subsidies that violate its WTO obligations. These duties are not punitive. They merely serve as a correction to unfair Chinese subsidies. They restore the level playing field that U.S. industries and small businesses such as wire producer and textile companies in North Carolina provide. H.R. 4015 will ensure that the Department of Commerce can continue to apply.
An additional 15 seconds.
Thank you. Countervailing duty and anti-subsidy laws to non-market economies that are violating current law. At the same time, we need robust trade policies that will strengthen our economy and build upon the partnerships we have made with countries around the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
I now yield 2 minutes to a gentleman who is very active in trade matters, Mr. Michaud from the state of Maine.
Gentleman from Maine is recognized for 2 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 4105. I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for their efforts in bringing this bill before this body. Passing this bill would ensure that the Commerce Department has the authority to apply tariffs on illegally subsidized goods from China and other non-market economies. For the state of Maine, passing this bill will protect the countervailing and anti-dumping duties in place on coated paper imports from China. From 2002 to 2009, China provided more than $33 billion in subsidies, many of them illegal, to the paper sector. As a result, China overtook the United States as the world's largest producer of paper and paper products. This growth in Beijing's paper sector hits Maine's mills hard. Since 2008, Maine workers from both Sappi Fine and New Page companies have become eligible for trade adjustment assistance after they were laid off as a result of increased foreign imports. But after countervailing and anti-dumping duties were applied to paper imports from China, one mill hired 100 employees. This is just one example of how much of a difference countervailing duties can make for an American company having to compete against illegally subsidized Chinese goods. H.R. 4105 will ensure that countervailing duties can continue to be applied to illegally subsidized goods for all countries, including China. This bill is critical to ensuring that our American businesses compete on a level playing field, and I urge all my colleagues to vote for it. And I want to once again thank the chairman and ranking member for their efforts in bringing this bill forward. It's always good to be on the same side as the chair and the ranking member. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania, recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the chairman. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 4105. Where I'm from in northwest Pennsylvania and western Pennsylvania, we relish competition. In fact, we can't wait to go head-to-head and toe-to-toe with anybody, anytime, any place in the world. The only thing we ask for is a level playing field, something that's fair for everyone. And when you look at markets in Vietnam and China and other non-market economies that are able to game us, we don't like it. So places like Sharon, where they built Sharon Tube, and Wheatland Tube, those were the workers I'm talking about, and those are the workers who I will tell you today would stand here with us, arm in arm, and saying, bring it on, bring it on. We want the competition. We can prove to the world that we're the best and always will be the best, but keep it a level playing field, keep the rules where they should be, and enforce them. And I thank you, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
I now yield 1 minute to a gentleman most active on these issues, Mr. Kritz from the great state of Pennsylvania.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a co-sponsor of this bill, I rise in strong support of H.R. 4105. In 2011, the U.S. Court of Appeals ruled that the Department of Commerce did not have the authority to impose countervailing duties on goods from non-market economies. Of the 24 countervailing duties currently in place against goods from non-market economies, 23 are from China. Without the legislative action we are proposing today to overturn this ruling, it is very likely that these current countervailing duties would be negated. This is unacceptable, and we cannot stand by when over 80,000 American manufacturing jobs are at stake. Almost every state is impacted by this decision, and almost every congressional district in Pennsylvania has companies that would be affected if this legislation does not pass. We must take action today and pass H.R. 4105 to overturn a flawed court ruling and to ensure that the Department of Commerce can continue to fight unfair subsidies that hurt American manufacturers and American workers. We must level the playing field, and I strongly urge my colleagues to stand with American workers and pass this bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed.
Gentleman from New York, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to join in what appears to be a bipartisan sentiment that's developing on the floor of the House today, and I'm pleased to be part of it. I'm pleased to stand with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and members of the Ways and Means Committee in support of a bill that will go a long way to protecting American job creators and American employees from coast to coast. What we are talking about is allowing the imposition of countervailing in order to protect the American market, to make sure that the American market is in a competitive position when it comes to our competitors in China, and making sure that when we go to the battlefield of the marketplace, that marketplace is put on an even, level playing field so that we can compete squarely. As my colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly, just articulated, I bet on the American worker every single time when we have a marketplace that is level, it's fair, and it's even. And that's why I ask all of my colleagues, to join us in sending a message today by passing the subject bill and send a message to the world and to the world economy and to the world markets that America will compete on an even playing field and allow the imposition of countervailing duties to make sure that we have free principles, free marketplace principles in place, and protect our American workers and protect our American job creators. And for that, I wholeheartedly support and stand with hard-working taxpayers across this country and yield